Hello and welcome to day 30 in our journey through the book of Acts. We're slowly coming to an end. Behind me, this beautiful ocean, the Southern California winter here at the beach. And Paul is also looking at a vast mass of water. He is right now facing the Aegean Sea, but his scenery is, very different. As we are reading chapter 27, and today I'll be sharing from verses 21 to 26, we see that Paul is in the midst of experiencing shipwreck. He's about to get stranded. And at times we feel like we are going through shipwreck as well. Sometimes we feel like, the ocean around us is being tossed up and down. And at times we get frustrated because we get stranded in our lives as well. Why is that happening? Even though we try to live a life that is pleasing to God, why is it that we have to go through these times? Let's read God's word together. And let's try to find hope. And let's try to, find a reason for these times and in purpose and what we are called to do when we are going through tumultuous seasons in our lives. Verse 21 reads, "Since they had been without food for a long time, Paul stood up among them and said, 'Men, you should have listened to me and not have set sail from Crete and incurred this injury and loss. Yet now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. For this very night there stood before me an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I worship. And he said, Do not be afraid, Paul, you must stand before Caesar, and behold, God has granted you all those who sail with you. So take heart, men, for I have faith in God that it will be exactly as I have been told. But we must run aground on some island.'" I'm sure that we have all come to an understanding by now that living a life as a Christian doesn't mean it is easy. And even though we try to live, in accordance to God's will and plan, even though we try to live a life that is pleasing to God, even though we try to live for His kingdom, there are times when we feel like we're going through, a stormy ocean. At times we feel like you're going through a shipwreck. At times we feel like we're about to get stranded. And it is easy to get frustrated. We feel like, hey, God, I'm living for you. I'm trying to live for your glory. Why am I facing these difficulties? When we look at Paul, we see that Paul is living in accordance to God's plan. God had revealed to Paul that it is God's will for Paul to go to Rome in the same way as he went to Jerusalem to testify and witness there. He wants him to go to Rome to give a defense of his faith, to speak about the gospel. And this is why Paul is traveling this way as a prisoner, pleading his case before Caesar, pleading the case for Christ in Rome. But he is facing shipwreck. It's not just the beginning part, he's already in the midst of it. And it's a difficult time. He's shackled down. They have been experiencing hunger. And imagine being on a ship that is going through a storm. Why is this happening? When we look careful here, we see that God is still in control. I think this is the first thing that we need to remember when we go through similar times or when we feel like we're going through hardship. God is still in control. And He still has a plan for us. We are still His people. We are still His sons and His daughters. And just because we're going through these trying times doesn't mean that He has lost sight. What are we called to do in these times? As He speaks to us and reminds us that He is still King. First of all, let's look at verse 22. Verse 22 says, "Yet now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. For this very night there stood before me an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I worship." Who do you belong and who do you worship? Even in difficult times, we belong to God. Even when we go through shipwreck, even though we feel like we are getting stranded, we need to worship God. And the same phrase, to take heart, is repeated in verse 25. And I mentioned this before in Sunday sermons as well as in Bible studies. When we look at the Bible, repetition means emphasis. So in verse 25 it says, "So take heart, men, for I have faith in God that it will be exactly as I've been told." When we are going through these times, God is giving us an opportunity to testify, to point towards Him. Paul is surrounded by non-believers. And as they're going through this storm, and as everyone is afraid and they fear they will all go and die, Paul remains calm. And he says, I have faith in God. And it will be exactly as I have been told. And because of my faith, because of my assurance, I'm able to be this calm. And this is why I'm able to tell you, take heart. Right now, if you're going through shipwreck, right now, if you feel you're being stranded or you are stranded, next time when you're going through a trying time, take that opportunity, because this world is looking at us. This world is in need for people who are able to speak of hope, because that's what the church has always been about. It's not about a church that is hip. It's not about a church that, is hype. It's always been about hope. And so I hope that you and I, we can join in this challenge, that especially in trying and difficult times, we are able to continue to point at God, to remind ourselves that we belong to Him, and especially in these difficult times, that we choose to worship Him. Please join me as we want to spend some time in prayer, and also take a look at our reflection questions today. And I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow as you're coming to our last day in our journey through the book of Acts. Have a great day.